At the very beginning of the story, we meet a cricket named Jiminy who is shivering badly from the cold. As he walks a little further, he reaches a quiet Italian village. That's when Jiminy's eyes fall on a small house nearby. This house belongs to an old man named Geppetto, a skilled woodcarver who spends his days making clocks and toys. He lives there with his loyal cat Figaro and his goldfish Cleo. Jiminy slips inside the house through the gap under the door and notices that Geppetto is deeply focused on his work. Curious, Jiminy slowly sneaks closer and realizes that Geppetto is carving a wooden puppet in memory of his late son. Geppetto looks emotional and broken as he works, clearly missing the child he lost. Just then, a man knocks on Geppetto's window. His arrival annoys Geppetto because this man keeps insisting on buying one of his cuckoo clocks. Even at night, the man shows up again, offering Geppetto any price he wants. But Geppetto refuses. Those clocks mean everything to him. His wife loved them deeply, and now that she is no longer alive, Geppetto has stopped selling them. Disappointed, the man leaves empty-handed. Geppetto then turns to his goldfish Cleo and says that people don't understand these clocks are his whole world. He made them for his wife, and she loved every single one. Picking up his son's photograph, Geppetto softly says that his mother loved him more than anything. From this moment, it becomes clear that both Geppetto's wife and child are gone, and now he is completely alone. Geppetto returns to his work and finally finishes the puppet. He carefully carves a smile on its face because he wants the puppet to always look happy. Since it's made from pine wood, he names it Pinocchio. Celebrating his creation, Geppetto turns on a music box and starts dancing, but Jiminy accidentally gets tangled inside the music box along with some clothes. After struggling, he finally frees himself and watches Geppetto dancing happily with Pinocchio. Geppetto introduces Pinocchio to Figaro, but the cat gets scared and runs away. Geppetto reassures her, but Figaro still keeps her distance. Cleo, however, seems to like Pinocchio instantly. Figaro points toward the clock, signaling that it's bedtime. A little later, Geppetto notices a shooting star in the sky. He's about to tell Figaro his wish, but stops believing that wishes don't come true if you say them out loud. Soon after, Geppetto falls asleep. Moments later, a bright magical light reflects from his son's photograph and shines onto Pinocchio, bringing him to life. Jiminy watches in shock as Pinocchio starts moving and talking, copying everything Jiminy says. Suddenly, the blue fairy appears. She removes Pinocchio's strings and fixes him. Jiminy explains that Geppetto wanted a child and that Pinocchio could be considered his son. Surprised, the blue fairy says that if Geppetto wanted a real child, he could have wished for one. Hearing this, Pinocchio asks when he can become a real boy, because that might make Geppetto truly happy. The blue fairy gives Pinocchio a test. To become a real boy, he must prove that he is brave, truthful, and selfless. Pinocchio asks how he can do that. She tells him to listen to his conscience. But since Pinocchio is just a puppet and has no conscience, the blue fairy assigns Jiminy the role of teaching him right from wrong. With magic, she transforms Jiminy's appearance, and Jiminy actually likes his new look. After that, the blue fairy disappears and closes the window. The sound wakes Geppetto up. Turning on the light, he asks Figaro and Cleo if they heard anything. Then he looks at Pinocchio and asks the same question. Pinocchio answers back. Seeing Pinocchio moving and talking, Geppetto is terrified at first, unable to understand how this is possible. Pinocchio explains that Geppetto wished upon the blue fairy for a child. Geppetto remembers the wish, and his fear turns into pure happiness. Pinocchio says that he knows Geppetto wished for a real child, and that the blue fairy told him he could become real if he learned certain things. Overjoyed, Geppetto plays music again, and the two start dancing together. Even Jiminy joins in, dancing with a toy nearby. Geppetto makes shoes for Pinocchio, and the next morning he sends him off to school, carefully explaining the way back home. Pinocchio happily leaves. After he's gone, a trash-eating bird named Sophia arrives at Geppetto's house. When Jiminy realizes that Pinocchio has gone to school alone, he panics and rushes after him, but freezes in fear when he sees Sophia. But Sophia quickly tells Jiminy that she doesn't eat bugs at all, she only eats trash. Feeling relieved, Jiminy asks Sophia to help him reach the school. Sophia agrees and flies him there. Meanwhile, a wolf named Honest John and a cat named Gideon are stunned when they see a living, breathing puppet walking down the road. Realizing this could make them rich, the two come up with a plan. They decide to trick Pinocchio and take him to Stromboli, a man who runs a puppet circus. Honest John starts talking sweetly to Pinocchio. Pinocchio tells them that his father wants him to go to school, which is why he's on his way there. Honest John cleverly responds that if Pinocchio becomes famous, his father would be even more proud of him. Hearing this makes Pinocchio excited, and he slowly starts believing them. As Pinocchio begins to walk with them, Jiminy finally reaches him with Sophia's help and lands on Honest John's hat. Pinocchio notices Jiminy, and Jiminy immediately warns him that he should go to school. Suddenly, Gideon pulls out a hammer to hit Jiminy, but at the last second, Jiminy jumps away, and the hammer hits Honest John instead, knocking him unconscious. A serious conversation begins between Jiminy and Pinocchio. Pinocchio insists that Honest John and Gideon will make him famous, and that his father will be proud of him. Jiminy reminds him that his father wanted him to go to school, not chase fame. He also explains that just because someone's name is honest doesn't mean they truly are. Confused, Pinocchio asks who he should trust. Jiminy replies that if he were in Pinocchio's place, he would trust the one the blue fairy told him to listen to, his conscience. Pinocchio finally agrees and decides to go to school. Jiminy and Pinocchio reach the school, but Jiminy tells him to go inside alone, explaining that bugs aren't welcome there. Pinocchio agrees and Jiminy feels proud watching him walk into the building. But suddenly, a teacher kicks Pinocchio out of the classroom, shouting that the school is only for real children, not puppets. The children inside burst out laughing at Pinocchio. Watching this breaks Jiminy's heart. He can't believe what just happened. Before Jiminy can do anything, Gideon traps him inside a glass jar, so he can't interfere anymore. Jiminy desperately tries to escape, but fails. Taking advantage of the situation, Honest John starts manipulating Pinocchio again. He tells Pinocchio that school isn't meant for him, and that the teacher herself said puppets are only good for shows. With more sweet talk and lies, Honest John and Gideon succeed in convincing Pinocchio to come with them. Jiminy calls out to Pinocchio, but he can't hear him. Gideon walks away, mocking Jiminy as he struggles inside the jar. Meanwhile, Geppetto grows worried. It's already 5 o'clock, and Pinocchio still hasn't returned home. Filled with fear, Geppetto decides to go look for him, taking Figaro and Cleo along. At the same time, we see a circus scene where Stromboli introduces Pinocchio to the audience. Honest John has sold Pinocchio to him. At the circus, Pinocchio meets a girl named Fabiana, who operates the puppets during the show. She tells Pinocchio that she wants to leave this place someday. We also notice that one of her legs is injured. When Pinocchio asks about it, she says it's a long story. Fabiana begins tying rough knots on Pinocchio's strings. When he asks why, she explains that it's Stromboli's idea. She also says that she feels sorry for him, but Pinocchio doesn't fully understand what she means. Fabiana then introduces her puppet, Sabina. The show begins. Pinocchio steps onto the stage and starts dancing like a normal puppet. Soon he begins dancing without any strings at all. Suddenly he slips and his wooden nose gets stuck in the stage floor. He struggles to pull it out, but can't. The audience bursts into laughter, thinking it's part of the act. Sabina enters the stage, controlled by Fabiana, and helps Pinocchio. Together, they start dancing beautifully. Soon, more puppets join them. These puppets are being controlled by a machine operated by Stromboli himself. Stromboli is enjoying the show a little too much. While dancing, he accidentally falls onto the machine, causing the puppets to move faster and faster. To keep up, Pinocchio starts dancing at an extreme speed. Suddenly, his feet catch fire. Seeing this, Stromboli panics and yells for Pinocchio to stop, but Pinocchio can't hear him. Stromboli rushes forward and throws a bucket of water on Pinocchio's feet, putting out the fire. And with that, the show comes to an end. The audience absolutely loves the show. Coins start raining down onto the stage. Seeing this, Stromboli is thrilled. He proudly lifts Pinocchio up and thanks everyone for their support. After the show ends, Pinocchio sits alone, quietly watching the other puppets. Suddenly, he hears singing. Curious, he follows the sound and reaches Fabiana's room. From outside, he watches her dance. Fabiana begins dancing with Sabina, and Pinocchio steps inside, joining her in the dance. But suddenly, Stromboli appears. He grabs Pinocchio and locks him inside a cage. Stromboli treats him cruelly. Heartbroken, Pinocchio calls out for his friend Jiminy and his father Geppetto. Stromboli coldly tells him that he's abandoned because wooden puppets don't have parents. Only real children are loved, he says. Hearing this completely shatters Pinocchio. He starts regretting his choices and breaks down in tears. Meanwhile, Geppetto is out in the heavy rain, desperately searching for Pinocchio with Figaro and Cleo. They reach the school, only to find it closed. At the same time, Jiminy is still trapped inside the glass jar. He calls out to Geppetto, but no one hears him. Geppetto leaves, and Jiminy's heart sinks. He loses hope and wishes he had never accepted the responsibility of being someone's conscience. Later, Fabiana speaks to Pinocchio from the roof of the wagon. She tells him that Stromboli is a selfish and cruel man, and that they want to help him escape, but Pinocchio doesn't trust her. So Fabiana uses Sabina to talk to him. Pinocchio listens closely to Sabina's words and slowly begins to trust her. Sabina says that they'll escape and start their own show, one where everyone is treated with respect. Suddenly, Stromboli returns. Fabiana quickly pulls Sabina away. Stromboli asks Pinocchio who was there, but Pinocchio stays silent. Stromboli looks up, locks the upper door, and tells Pinocchio to rest because they're leaving for another city to perform. As the wagon moves, it passes by Jiminy. When Jiminy realizes Pinocchio is inside, he calls out to him, but Pinocchio can't hear a thing. Then a stone from the road hits the jar, lifting it slightly into the air. Seizing the moment, Jiminy escapes the jar and rushes to Pinocchio. Pinocchio is overjoyed to see him. Jiminy jokes, saying, "You didn't think fame would come with a cage, did you?" Pinocchio replies that he never wanted to be famous. The moment he says this, his nose suddenly grows longer, shocking both him and Jiminy. Pinocchio continues, saying that he didn't like the applause because it was all a lie. His nose grows even longer. That's when Jiminy realizes the truth. This is the blue fairy's magic. She wanted Pinocchio to be honest, and every time he lies, his nose grows longer. Jiminy explains this to him, feeling ashamed. Pinocchio apologizes for not listening to Jiminy earlier. As soon as he says sorry, his nose shrinks a little. But when Pinocchio lies again, his nose grows longer once more, stretching all the way to the cage key. Jiminy uses this chance to grab the key, unlock the cage, and free Pinocchio. Together they escape. Pinocchio tells Jiminy about Sabina, but suddenly, another wagon arrives and kidnaps Pinocchio again. Jiminy gets tangled up in the wagon as well. The wagon is heading toward Pleasure Island. There, Pinocchio meets Lampwick and the coachman. At first, Pinocchio doesn't want to go. He doesn't trust them, but they convince him anyway. When Pinocchio arrives, he sees children breaking things, eating non-stop and causing chaos. Watching this makes him uncomfortable. He thinks about Geppetto and worries that his father would be heartbroken if he knew where he was. Meanwhile, Geppetto, along with Cleo and Figaro, feels guilty. He believes he shouldn't have treated Pinocchio like a real child by sending him to school. He wonders where Pinocchio could be. Suddenly, Sophia appears and shows Geppetto a flyer for Pleasure Island. Seeing it, Geppetto panics and says that if Pinocchio is there, then he's in serious danger. Back on Pleasure Island, Jiminy arrives and witnesses something terrifying. Dark, shadowy figures locking donkeys inside cages. Seeing this, Jiminy is completely shocked. On Pleasure Island, Pinocchio and Lampwick start playing a game of pool. As they play, Pinocchio quietly wishes that his conscience were here with him. Just then, Jiminy suddenly appears and calls out to Pinocchio. Hearing Jiminy's voice, Pinocchio is shocked. But before Jiminy can say much, Lampwick swings a stick at him, knocking Jiminy through a pipe, forcing him to witness the same horrifying sight he saw earlier. At the same time, Lampwick's ears begin to change, turning into donkey ears. A tail starts growing too. Pinocchio watches in terror as Lampwick begs him for help, but it's already too late. Lampwick fully transforms into a donkey. Moments later, Pinocchio feels it too. His ears turn donkey-like, and a tail appears behind him. Jiminy rushes back and immediately pulls Pinocchio away. A man and a dark, shadowy creature chase them, but Pinocchio and Jiminy jump straight into the ocean and escape. They rush to Geppetto's house, but Geppetto isn't there. Looking through the window, they notice something shocking. All of Geppetto's clocks are gone. Both of them are stunned. Then Sophia arrives and explains everything. Geppetto has gone to Pleasure Island. Jiminy and Pinocchio are shocked as Sophia tells them the truth. Geppetto sold all his precious clocks to buy a boat so he could search for Pinocchio. Those clocks were priceless to him because they were memories of his wife. But even more than those memories, Geppetto loves Pinocchio. Hearing this breaks Pinocchio's heart. Without hesitation, he rushes back toward the island. On the way, they spot a wagon. Jiminy suspects it belongs to Stromboli and tells Pinocchio to hide. Jiminy asks Sophia which direction Geppetto went. Just then, Fabiana appears with her puppet Sabina. She tells Pinocchio that Stromboli has been arrested and that they've started their own show. She invites Pinocchio to join them, but Pinocchio gently refuses. He says he has to find his father. The moment he makes this choice, his donkey ears and tail disappear. Pinocchio becomes normal again. Fabiana smiles and tells him he made the right decision. She says they'll meet again someday. Sophia grabs a rope in her beak and points ahead. They finally spot Geppetto's boat. Pinocchio shouts for his father. Seeing Pinocchio, Geppetto is overwhelmed with happiness and rushes toward him. But suddenly, a massive sea monster rises from the ocean and swallows both Pinocchio and Geppetto. Inside the monster, Pinocchio quickly comes up with a plan. He lights a fire using his wooden body. The flames irritate the monster, forcing it to open its mouth again and again until they manage to escape. For a moment, it feels like the danger is over, but then the monster chases them once more. Pinocchio runs with everything he has to save his father. There's a moment when it seems they'll be swallowed again, but Pinocchio barely escapes. Geppetto collapses, unconscious. Pinocchio desperately tries to wake him, but nothing works. Cleo and Figaro are heartbroken. Pinocchio breaks down in tears. Then one of Pinocchio's tears falls onto Geppetto's face. Geppetto slowly opens his eyes. He looks at Pinocchio and softly says that when he wished upon the star, Pinocchio might have felt like he was someone else's wish, but he wasn't. Geppetto wished for him, and there is nothing about Pinocchio that Geppetto would ever want to change. Father and son embrace tightly. Together, they head back home. In the end, Jiminy tells us that many stories were told after this. Stories saying that Pinocchio completely changed and became a real boy. Did that really happen? Who knows? But one thing Jiminy is sure of, Pinocchio was just as real as any real child could ever be. So if you believe in heart over perfection, hit like, subscribe, and stay with us, because the next story might change you.